We're going to start with an analogy because finding an argument is kind of like finding a building. Whether you can access the roof or not, whether there's something on the roof to access or not, each building has a roof. The roof is the highest part of the building. So kind of go spatial with me here. You enter a building on the ground floor. Some buildings have basements. Some buildings have 2 levels, 3 levels, 15 levels. You have really tall buildings, really short buildings. But every building has a ground level and every building has a roof, no matter what. So you can imagine the foundation of a roof leading up to, dare I say, building up to the roof of the building. So here's how I want you to start thinking about buildings. There's a foundation, and the foundation supports the first level. The first level supports the second level, however many levels there are. The roof only exists so long as everything underneath exists. If we were to, and I'm sorry for this, blow up the building, exploding the foundation and all 3 levels, because this is a 3-level building, the roof no longer exists, right? The roof only exists if it's the top part of something. If there were no structure and it was just concrete or dirt, rocks, gravel, there would be no roof. The roof requires the building. The building leads to the roof if you were to enter on the ground floor and then work your way up by escalator, elevator, stairs, etc. So now we're going to make that analogy from the building to an argument. If we can think of an argument as having 2 parts, then we can start to see how the 2 parts are related to one another, like so. An argument is a conclusion that is supported by deeper levels of thinking. The premises support the conclusion. And just like a building, if we were to blow up the lower levels, for example, show that premise 1 and premise 2 and premise 3 were false, then you lose your conclusion because your conclusion, like the roof of a building, requires that further supporting stuff underneath to be built up. So the conclusion requires those premises to build it up. A good argument goes from premises to conclusions, and the premises really are true, so they support a true conclusion. Now you might be wondering why it says assumptions at the bottom, analogously to the foundation. And that's because sometimes conclusions are supported by premises, but we don't want to forget that those premises require their own support. So there are always underlying assumptions, things that you might not think are a part of the building. Sometimes you forget that the foundation, that ground level, is a part of the building. It might be easier if there was a basement. But the basement is where you would put things that nobody coming in the building is really supposed to see. It's like storage. So in your mind, you store ideas that you think are true. And you still use those ideas, those hidden or secret or not often seen or contemplated ideas. You use them to support premises. And the premises support the conclusion. That's just what an argument is. It's a combination of whatever premises are required to actually get you to the conclusion. If you were to find a wall, then you've probably found a part of a building or a building. And similarly, if you were to find a premise, then you have found the part of an argument or an argument. Remember that an argument is a special combination of statements. Just because you have a bunch of statements doesn't mean you have an argument, because people talk all the time, people write all the time. So you could be hearing or reading a bunch of statements that aren't trying to convince you of anything. They are statements, but those statements aren't the parts of an argument. But some statements are premises and some statements are conclusions. And knowing that an argument is made up of premises and conclusions, then you know that when you have found premises, you have found an argument. When you find conclusions, you found an argument. So just like looking for a building, it might be easier if you first find the numbers on a building, which is just a part of the building. I'm telling you that an easy way to find an argument is to find the parts of an argument. Here's a statement. You should go to class. It's a statement more than just being a sentence because in some contexts it will be true and in some contexts it will be false. It can be true or false. It depends on what you mean. If somebody were to say you should go to class on a Saturday and you don't go to Saturday school and they're talking about what you should do right now, it would be false that you should go to class. The statement would be false, but the statement might be true if while we're talking on this Sunday or this Saturday or this Friday, we're talking about what you should be doing on Monday. You're asking what we should do on Monday, and I'm talking about, wait, isn't there school on Monday? And somebody says you should go to class. That statement might be true. So we have this statement. It's more than a sentence. It can be true or false. You should go to class. That idea, that premise, could be like this. You should go to class. You can't be in two places at once. So you should not go to the party. Now that statement, you should go to class, is the premise. But the statement could also be the conclusion of a different argument. So here it is as the result of your reasoning. Your premise is that you want to do well in school. And the argument here says, look, if you want to do well in school, then you should go to class. The conclusion becomes you should go to class. So now we see that one statement, a statement as simple as you should go to class, could be the premise, it could be the conclusion. So how do we know which it is? Usually, right before you get the premise of an argument, there will be special words that are used. For example, one of these. If you want to do well in class, then you better study. Since you want to do well in school, you better go to class. Because I understand, I won't be mad. After all, today is Monday, so let's just study. All of these are indicators, signals, markers of premises. And just like there are for premises, there are also indicators for conclusions. In this example, if you want to do well in school, then you should go to class. You have the marker if, which tells you what's coming next as a premise, and you have the marker then, which tells you what's coming next is a conclusion. Now, this is a good, easy example of a conditional statement, which goes if, ... fill in the blanks with whatever you want, then, ... Sometimes it won't be as simple, and we'll talk about more complicated cases. But if you have the form if ... then ... then the if tells you a premise is coming, and the then tells you that a conclusion is coming. When you find words like these, you've found indicators for premises and conclusions. And since premises and conclusions make up an argument, when you find those special words, then you have probably found an argument. Say, for example, that you had a building you're in charge of and you want to make it, for whatever reason, super hard to find. Okay. You might survey the environment, see what colors are natural there, and then paint the exterior walls that color. It would make it super hard to find. Don't, for example, get very big legible numbers of the address of the building and put it on the front because somebody could use GPS and find it very easily. If you wanted to make the building super easy to find, you would do the opposite. You would use a bold color that's not in the environment, like the color red. It's not typical, so it would stand out. Analogously, you can make your argument harder or easier to identify. If you wanted to make your argument easy to identify, use premise indicators and conclusion indicators that aren't typically used in reading or writing. hence, thus, therefore are famous for being indicators of conclusions. And we don't colloquially use these words unless there is somebody trying to convince somebody of something. Unlike the word so, we use the word so a lot, sometimes for no reason, sometimes for a bad reason. So like, what are you going to wear anyway? Okay. In that question, the word so and the word like have no function. But we use them, and we use them and it's normal, and we don't hear them sometimes as even there. If I wanted to hide my argument, I would use a conclusion indicator like the word so.